Thank you for joining us for the Arts and Democracy podcast, a global conversation with Olga Levina. For the free world to protect democracy, we have to explore and understand what democracy is, why it is so important to protect, and how democracies rise and fall throughout the history of humanity, what its promise is, and what role do the arts play in a democratic society. Now, please welcome our host, Olga Levina.
Hello, my name is Olga Levina. I'm executive producer of Jersey City Theater Center, and this is Arts and Democracy. Well, I've spent almost all my life believing that the arts are not luxury. They are essential to our wellness, the way we connect and build communities. Through this podcast, I want to explore how creativity and civic life come together, how artists, activists, and everyday people use their voices to make change and bring us closer as a community. And every episode will cross borders, share stories, and discover how art helps us imagine, how art helps us imagine a more just, compassionate, and democratic world. Because for me, art has always been more than performance or beautiful painting on a wall. It is a dialogue, personal and community wellness, a bridge and an act of hope. I'm so happy to welcome Mark McDonald to Arts and Democracy today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming. Mark, as a gay community voice and an activist whose work reminds us why creativity and activism matter, not just on stage or in the gallery, but in everyday life and, of course, in leadership. Through your vision and through your life, you challenge powers. And I believe that today's dialogue should start with a little story and introduction of yourself.
Okay.
So if you please tell us, Mark, where are you coming from today, and what is your history?
Sure. And thank you very much. And I want to just acknowledge that your opening remarks, because they're incredibly poignant and they speak very clearly, I think, to the LGBT choral movement, which has been around for generations, very, very long time. So I was a former executive director of the New York City Gay Men's Chorus in the late 90s and early 2000s. And prior to that, I sat on the National Board of Directors of Gala Choruses, which is the kind of association of LGBT choruses in America. We held leadership conferences and choral festivals all around the country, helping them to grow and to expand, create new music, et cetera, et cetera. I think also, you talked about activism, and it just kind of reminded me that was one of my hooks that I got when I got hooked into this movement, because my first activism started with ACT UP. Obviously, that was during the beginning of the AIDS crisis, but ACT UP was an organization that created a space where people who felt disenfranchised on the outside, we were losing our friends and family, could come together, and we belonged, and we mattered, and we were okay, and we were fighting for what we believed in. And there's a great power in that and strength that we were able to pull. And I think the same thing happens that's carried over right into the LGBT choral movement, really all around the world.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, you've spent your life in intersection of music, community, and activism. How did choral music first became a part of your story?
Well, I mean, one is a gay man who loves to sing in choirs. I think as young boys or young men find solace in those types of organizations, sometimes being able to be creative and to feel comfortable. And I've loved singing from, as a child and all the way through high school. But I remember hearing my first Gay Men's Chorus, which was the Boston Gay Men's Chorus at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Portland, Maine, back in probably 1991. And that incredible, I can still kind of shiver at it now, this amazing feeling of connection and unity and powerful togetherness that I hadn't really experienced before. And then shortly after that, the ACT UP activism kind of came on, and then they just conjoined, and we moved forward from that point. And I knew very early on that this was something that was incredibly special to me and something that I wanted to be involved in for a very long time.
Where did you grow up, Mark?
I grew up in southern Missouri, a small town in southern Missouri called Marshall, Missouri. Nice
And
Midwestern.
how was it? How was growing up in a small community in Missouri?
At that time, it was wonderful. That was obviously before social media and our such divisive political rhetoric, and it was safe, and the world was small. It was simple. It was a simpler, much, much simpler time.
So
and I loved
what
it.
was your journey from small community in Missouri to New York City?
That's an interesting question. Well, my personal journey is that as a child and growing up in small town Midwest Missouri, it was a wonderful experience. As I began to get older and realize that I was gay and go through the coming out process, it did begin to change for me. And I realized very quickly that this was not that the world was much larger, that there were other opportunities and other options that I could find elsewhere. And so I ended up moving to the East Coast. I first moved to Maine and then down to New York City. All of it kind of on a wing and a prayer, but it was a risk, but I think it was one of the greatest risks I ever could have taken. It's changed my life. I mean, obviously changed my life.
So, Mark, my next question is, how did you get involved with New York City Gay Men's Chorus?
Well, I was working at an insurance company as an HR generalist, and it was sort of the universe acted in this really strange way, as it often does sometimes. And the company was bought. My position was relocated to South Carolina. I didn't go to South Carolina. A friend of mine, Dudley Hogue, who was at the New York City Gay Men's Chorus, called and said, this position is going to be coming available. Why don't you come to New York? So I took a 50% pay cut and moved from Portland, Maine to New York City to take this incredible job. An absolutely amazing opportunity.
Wow. So what is the highlight of that time and also of you being a leader, because you became executive director of the chorus? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So highlights, I mean, there's so many. I mean, obviously, this is a very established organization, and their very first performance was in Alice Tully Hall. And they'd performed at Carnegie for many, many years. So for this small Midwestern farm boy to come in literally within the first few months, and we're producing a concert at Carnegie Hall, what was incredible. To meet the individuals and the men who were so committed and dedicated to this organization and this really family, because I came in the late 90s, pretty much immediately after the AIDS crisis. And what those men had lived through is truly unimaginable. The chorus creates this fabric of a very tight-knit community. But overall, at the end, I think they lost over 125, 130 people, which is an astronomical amount of life. And there was a tremendous amount of pain. So to kind of be a part of that, even if from the outside, felt like an honor. So we got to sing at Carnegie Hall and Joan Rivers' Christmas party, and I don't know, things. But the highlight for me, I mean, I get a little emotional. I think about it. It was probably September 12th of 2001, and it didn't occur in a concert hall. It didn't have an orchestra. There's no programs. What happened after 9/11 in New York is that people would gather, and I don't know for anybody who was there, people gathered in public spaces and just kind of stood there, and it was quiet. And people got solace from each other, I think, because we didn't know what to do. We were scared, we were hurt. So it was the chorus members who decided the day after we would go and do what we do best, which is sing. And so we went to places like Union Square and St. Vincent's Hospital, and there were a couple of other parks. And out of this stillness would rise this music, this beautiful sound of Amazing Grace or America the Beautiful or something. They had no idea who we were, but it just created this moment that was really, really powerful. So many amazing opportunities, but that's one that is really special to me.
Wow. Thank you so much for this. I remember that time like it was yesterday, and how lost we were with all those flyers everywhere. Please.
Yes.
son, please find my daughter. And standing and reading that was just,
That's an especially poignant memory for me as well. We were at St. Vincent's Hospital and there was some construction going on next to it. And, they had set up the triage waiting for people to come, but they didn't. But it was done in the environment of all of those posters and placards of individuals and faces of fathers and sons and wives and daughters who would ultimately probably not come home. It was a powerful time. So for our organization to be able to offer just some momentary solace or peace or
healing,
healing, it was incredible. It was amazing to be a part of that.
building those bridges.
Mhm,
So
mhm, mhm.
yeah, thank you so much, Mark. So I also would like to ask you, during time when LGBTQ plus representation in the arts was still fighting for visibility, how did you and the chorus have dealt with that? Like, it was probably challenging, to say the least.
So yeah, and I think it was more challenging as I was on the board of directors for gala choruses, and I would experience this when I was with the main gay men's chorus for smaller choruses in smaller towns in outlying areas, whether that be in Nebraska and Iowa and Maine. Many concerts were met sometimes with protesters, but there's actually a really awesome YouTube video. I think it's the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C., who there was some event and they were protesting and they had the flags, God hates fags, and the horrible signs. And the chorus comes and surrounds them and holds hands and sings Make Them Hear You. And it's about these personal, small moments that combine over time to create significant change.
Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles which are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you.
To love God is to hate sin.
In terms of LGBT choruses, one of the other things that they have been able to add is an incredible amount of repertoire out there. There had been so much new commissioned music that composers have been able to create, and really, really powerful pieces of music. And I'm thinking of major choral works like Hidden Legacies, which came out of San Francisco. New Jersey Gay Men's Chorus, actually at that time it was called Delaware Valley Men's Chorus. Commissioned Jay Kowarski wrote Prayers for Bobby, which was, I think there was a movie. It's a story about a Christian mom who had a gay son and she kept trying to convert him and he ultimately ended up committing suicide. Very tragic story, but it's this amazing song cycle. There's a song cycle called Naked Man, which was written in the late 90s by Robert Seelig, that is just so incredibly powerful and moving that will last for, I hope these last for a really, really long time. Gala Choruses has established a new commissioned work so we can continue to develop and write and put new music out into the world, into the space, to help create change, to keep the music going, honey. Keep on singing.
Keep on singing. I love that. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's go back to the late 1980s when the American Choral Directors Association held blind auditions and selected the New York City Gay Men's Chorus, only to tell you that the group could perform only if you drop the word gay from the name. What do you remember feeling in that moment?
Yeah. So I was not involved with New York Gay Men's Chorus at that time, but that was a story and it's a part of the history. And I think it's an important part of the history. And it's important to understand all of that. But that is what happened. New York City Gay Men's Chorus submitted a blind audition and they were selected to perform at the ACDA convention. And you're right, when it was discovered, they rescinded the invitation unless they would remove the word gay. And they later implemented a policy that said no choruses could sing if it had the word gay or lesbian in the title. They were taken to court. There was some litigation. And after 2 years, it was settled. Actually, they've reconciled. Both organizations are great. And ACDA recognizes the work of the choral movement, and I think they work really, really well with each other. But that was a moment in time that was why we need to be here in part. And so ACDA has now invited the New York City Gay Men's Chorus to come back and sing at their annual convention. I believe it's in June of 2026. They're going to be the featured chorus, which is quite an honor. It's part of the story. It's part of the history. It's not part that I was involved in, but again, I think it just indicates that that's why we do what we do.
Wow.
Hearts and minds are changed.
Yeah, that's interesting because the mission of ACDA includes fostering peace and justice with choral singing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, that would be very interesting. I mean, and I believe that they believe that honestly. Things were quite different in 1980, and we see music. This is an international movement. There are LGBT choruses all around the world. Beijing Queer Chorus has a tagline of change through music, using music to change China. In an oppressive society like China, there's over a dozen LGBT choruses. And there are several in South America. There's probably at least a dozen between Mexico and on down into South America.
So, Mark, and I am someone who come from the country that everything was censored. Sometimes my parents had to go to the kitchen, and as a kid, I was always questioning why are they talking politics in a kitchen. So we called it kitchen politics. I grew up in this world, and it seems as of right now our country is going back and censorship is widely supported, especially by Republican Party in parts of our country. So my question is, do you feel right now that it's early or late, it's early 90s, and we just going back into that time of when we have to choose what words we can or cannot use and who we are as
Wow, what a great question. So, I believe all politics, the personal is political, and certainly we are in an incredibly divisive time. But I see it quite differently than, say, the early 70s or 70s and 80s. I think the 70s and 80s is when, certainly in terms of the LGBT community, it was any type of discrimination or outcast or rejection was based on ignorance. And today it's much more politically aligned, and it's based upon power and oppression. And those two are different. I don't think they're any less dangerous, but in the 70s and 80s, we dealt with that with a lot of kind of what the LGBT choral movement is, which is coming out, having concerts, inviting our friends, inviting our family, ingratiating ourselves into the community. Today, it's even more important to do that, but we have to go beyond that as well and take a political stand.
As someone who came to this country in 1992, when I want to take a political stand, what do you suggest I do and people like me?
Show up. And it is literally show up, whether it is at a No Kings rally or an anti-book burning rally. And we still do live in a democracy, and our vote still does matter. So get out and vote while it's possible to still get out and do that. And we cannot be silent, And we look back at history in the 1930s, and it wasn't the people in power, it was the silence of those who were not, that we so wish was different. And I don't want to be remembered for that. And so we're going to speak up and stand up and do what we can to stop it now.
Thank you so much, Mark, for that. So
thank you.
Silence is what is the biggest crime right now.
Absolutely. And I understand that And, and I've seen this, there are families where they may agree with the cause of democracy and free elections, but other family members or the community members or where they live, they may feel some sort of pressure that they can't speak out about it. In their heart, they feel one way, but in their actions, they may act. But it's important to knock down that fear and walk through that fear and stand up for what you believe in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, for this conversation and for reassuring me that silence is a crime against democracy.
Okay.
In a way, that this is how I see it.
Okay.
And thank you for coming and telling us your story. And I hope that people will see it and make their stand.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for joining us for the Arts and Democracy podcast, a global conversation with Olga Levina. The Arts and Democracy podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Shane Austin Miller from Seize the Day Communications. Be sure to check out upcoming global arts performances and programs at Jersey City Theater Center. Until next time, support the arts and defend democracy.